I thought I'd hop on here and read a beautiful essay. I had planned to do these at 4 p.m. California time and 7 p.m. Eastern time on Sundays and Wednesdays, but I've just had to kind of jump on whenever I have the energy, and I do have the energy, so I thought I would share this essay today. As many of you know, my son and I have been sick, and this week, 2 days ago, I think, my beautiful partner, Jeanette, was positive, and we had thought that we got it from her, and it looks like that's probably the case. And it's been just such an up and down journey. He's been sicker than I have. He's on day 33, I think, and he's had fever for 26 of those days. We just can't get the fever to go down. And I've been very up and down, short of breath some days, weak some days, and then other days have energy. So today I had a kind of extra burst of energy this evening and thought I would just hop on here and read a beautiful college essay. I think the impetus to do that, especially at these times, these very crazy times, to reach across the ether and reach out to people and share the beautiful work that students have done, which otherwise, of course, would never see the light of day, is just it's so amazing that we have this technology and can do that. I think I've noticed a lot of people doing Facebook Lives who never had. I never had before either. But it just seems like such an important moment that I seem to have the impulse to do it. So this particular essay that I'm going to read by Soraya Nair, thank you, Soraya, is called Dendrochronology. Dendrochronology is the study of the rings of trees. And the essay was written as a kind of snapshots. She had the idea that she wanted to write about her brother. I won't spoil it for you. It'll come out in the essay why. And just went about it at first the way many students do, by saying, you know, my brother had this situation, this impacted my life, this is what happened. And that leads to, well, it's very difficult to write that way, to set out in advance, to know exactly what you want to say, and then try to say it in the order that you think it in. I like to work, when I work with students, I like to have them just brainstorm ideas or not, and just free write and see what comes out, and then read what they've written to figure out what they're trying to say. That's sort of the mainstay of my method, the method of my madness, I guess you could say, or using madness as my method. I think that's more like it. Anyway, this is a really beautiful essay. She wrote it in these sort of snapshots. Well, first she tried to write it from beginning to end, and it was a disaster. And finally, I just said, well, why don't you just think of moments, which is often what we do. And it happened in real time, in real moments. Just think of moments, and then maybe we'll figure out a way to put it together. I don't want to tell you too much before I read the essay. So there's sort of snapshots in the essay, these moments that she remembered. And just, she used a metaphor that became this sort of extended metaphor of the essay that's very beautiful, the rings of trees. And I'll read it, and then I'll probably comment a little bit after on just my thoughts about how it's relevant now and why it comes to mind. It's no accident that I want to read it now. I probably have 300 essays I could read. So I'll read Dendrochronology, and then I'll probably comment on it a little bit after. It's in my book, The Art of the College Essay, which was my first book. Came out in 2015, I think. And since then, I wrote another one called Unstuck. This one's from the first book. My life has grown outward, rings on rings on rings. If you were to take a cross-section, you would see many regular, consistent rings representing wholesome years and inspired growth. But like a tree whose maturation can be affected by fire, drought, fluctuating temperatures, or other stressors, so my life too consists of rings that are irregular, darkened not by early frost or insect infestations, but rather by pressures in my family and my own internal struggles. My earliest memory is of a fork coming at my face, as if my face were a dartboard. Sanath, my brother, is standing on a chair, laughing and pulling out more dinnerware from the cabinets. I was a year old and he was 3. Knocked from my high chair to the ground, I remember being face to face with the carpet, the color of oatmeal. When my brother was 3, it was discovered that he had a rare form of epilepsy from which he suffered seizures attacking his left frontal lobe. In the first part of my adolescent years, I began realizing how others saw Sanath, a lanky kid, almost 5'8", wearing an oversized t-shirt with a Disney character on it, preferring to talk to children rather than adults. Lingering in the front of a cash register at Target, muttering to himself and sometimes waving his hands in the air, having an intense debate with himself, maybe reenacting a scene from Tarzan, I see the looks directed at him. Parents usher their children past him quickly and glance at him over their shoulders, as if worried he will create a scene of epic proportion. Mom, make him stop. He's talking to himself again. Why can't you just understand? My mother sighs. Photographs from when I was 4 or 5 show my brother and I swimming in pools of bright blue with webbed light reflections, clambering over train replicas at community parks in an area filled with wood chips, sharing space on the blue couch speckled with pastel yellow polka dots, watching reruns of Dragon Tales, beaming up at the glowing screen. Polaroids of myself at 3 years old, nursing a sore elbow, tears running down my face. A tragic scene, until you note the skinny arm around my shoulder, providing a pillar for my childish sorrows. Time and time again, my brother is my champion, the biggest source of comfort in my life. Recently, I read an article that describes how trees speak to each other. They interact to help each other grow by warning each other of insect attacks or other environmental threats. I cannot help but wonder how my life interacts with Sanath's and how his rings look, and even if I have helped in forming them. I wonder if, like the trees, my life force somehow speaks to my brother's, soothes him when he's upset, angers him at times, helps him survive. I wonder if you could read this in the rings of his life as clearly as you could read it in mine. I think when I think about what moved me to read this particular one out of probably infinite amount, but certainly 300 or so winning essays I've collected over the years and that are published in Best College Essays or from students I'm working with now even. I think it's this idea of, what's going on now, this pandemic is epic. It's probably, it's definitely the biggest thing that's happened to the world since World War II. And certainly it's going to have an effect on our rings. If later you can look back and take a cross section and see how our rings are formed, the impact or effects on our psyche, potentially even on our bodies. Of course, there's the worry that I have with my son that there will be the long tail of this virus will have, I fear that it will have lasting impact. And I certainly hope not, but it is for a lot of people, kidney and heart and vascular and brain and neurological and lung issues. And there's just this sense in this essay, of course, of using that metaphor of the rings of trees to think about as a lens through which she's looking at her life and her brother's life, and the fact that the impact that her brother and this rare form of epilepsy, which resulted in his having seizures, and I think he was developmentally disabled, as I recall her describing it to me, and how that affected her life, and the rings, how it affected the rings of her formation in a way. I think it's one of those moments in history which certainly we will never forget. I suppose it remains to be seen. what impact it will have on the rings of our lives, but certainly it's going to be one of those darkened rings where there was a stressor and at the very least a stressor and potentially infestation, as she says in her essay. So I think that's one reason I was compelled today to read that essay, the thought about the impact of this pandemic on all of our lives. I think also the idea at the end, this new research that's come out in the last few years about trees speaking to each other, and the silent ways that they do that. I think it's this sense of the collective unconscious, and also the ways in which the way we've treated the environment is sort of coming back to get us in many ways through, in climate change, and I'm sure you could think about it in terms of this pandemic as well. And so there's that beautiful moment at the end. Actually, this part always kind of brings tears to my eyes when she speaks about her own, the stress that her brother, living with her brother, or this brother, created in her life. Polaroids of myself at 3 years old, nursing a sore elbow, tears running down my face. A tragic scene until you note the skinny arm around my shoulder, providing a pillar for my childish sorrows. Time and time again, my brother is my champion, the biggest source of comfort in my life. And then I'm just going to read this last paragraph again, because this is what I'm speaking about now, in the way that each of us impacts each other and the environment. The sort of collective unconscious that underlies our present predicament, and hopefully silver lining in it. Recently, I read an article that describes how trees speak to each other. They interact to help each other grow by warning each other of insect attacks or other environmental threats. I cannot help but wonder how my life interacts with Sanath's and how his rings look, and even if I have helped informing them, I wonder if, like the trees, my life force somehow speaks to my brother's, soothes him when he's upset, angers him at times, helps him survive. I wonder if you could read this in the rings of his life as clearly as you could read it in mine. Beautiful essay. Just to remember, too, this is a 17-year-old girl writing a college admissions essay in an effort to get into the college of her dreams. And of course, if I never collected these, they would never be read again. They would just be, they're not archived or saved or anything. They would just be deleted or in the past recycled. So it's a great pleasure to come on. I see a lot of people. Thank you, everybody, for jumping on with me and being here at this live moment. It gives me a lot of pleasure to share it with you. And next time I have energy, I can't promise when that's going to be. It's just been such a roller coaster, but next time I have energy, I'll come on and do it again, and would love to hear your feedback and your comments. And please stay well, everyone. See you soon.